Should leveling in an MMO be slower than it is currently? Is the genre actually dying or dead? And perhaps more notably, have mobile games just actually kind of just ruined what's left of the genre with all of everything that they've added, like microtransactions and all kinds of other terrible things? Join me as we look at some of your hot takes about MMOs, because I asked you, and boy did you deliver, both here on YouTube and on Twitter. And some of your favorite content creators too. Actually a lot of content creators responded to this. A whole lot of them. Let's start with one of them, Jamie Chaos. There are a lot of, wait, hang on. I need to try and do like a better impression of Jamie Chaos. I've got an idea though. Gotta extend the beard a little bit if I'm gonna do this justice. There are a lot of good MMOs currently, and the genre isn't dying. It's just left behind sizable holes in various markets. And indie devs are trying to create those games for players. Now I couldn't agree more with this hot take. For obvious reasons, I support the fuck out of indie devs. The idea that the MMO genre is dying or is dead has been around for quite some time. Hell, I had a short-lived series on this channel called MMOs Aren't Dead, where I basically looked at MMOs like Guild Wars 2, Everquest, Lord of the Rings Online, and more to see how they're doing with player populations and expansions. But the thing is, it's not really all that debatable to say that the genre itself is dying when you have multiple MMOs boasting well over 1 million players. It's thriving in many ways, and it's in pop culture in ways that it hasn't been before. But it is also relatively small compared to other subgenres in the gaming space. But more to the point, and more to Chaos's point specifically, who you can find on Twitch as Jamie Chaos or on YouTube as Chaos and Lace, but there are holes in the genre. There are holes that need to be filled. The genre, in a sense, is dead in that way. Those pockets, those holes that aren't filled are dead. If you wanted a game like Ultima Online with engaging PvP, PvE, crafting, housing, no levels, and a skill-based system, the genre is kind of dead. If you want a group-focused high fantasy PvE MMO that does not rely on questing and has a vibrant raid and group scene like EverQuest, it too is dead. It's not that there aren't options. Ultima Online and EverQuest still exist after all, but that type of game has been abandoned for about 2 decades at this point, with the exception of the ones that currently exist. And the only ones willing to make games like that, to Jamie Chaos's point here, are indie studios like Fractured Online, Monsters and Memories, Astral Creation, or Pantheon. The genre itself isn't actually dead, but there are parts of it that are suffocating, and those parts of it aren't going to be filled with the next overly monetized shiny turd that comes out from a big company. You probably know which one I'm currently thinking of. Hypa14 had this to say: leveling and combat needs to be slowed down in nearly every modern MMO. Retail WoW, Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online, Lost Ark, all just have you sprinting to a marker and absolutely nuking everything in the area, and then sprinting to the next circle on the map. The slow moments gave you time to plan your pulls and have a chat with others and invite them to join you. I'm currently playing Janther Wilds, and it's an enjoyable game, pretty darn good. But I also gave Lord of the Rings Online a shot yesterday, and I made a friend while questing and talked with him for an hour. That hasn't happened with me in an MMO in years. I love this comment from Hypa14 so much because I think it's a key part of what has kind of been the ARPGification of the MMO. When I say ARPGification, I'm kind of talking more about the Diablo type game, the top-down ARPG, not whatever the hell like New World is trying to rebrand themselves as. Basically the gathering up of hordes of enemies and destroying them all, grabbing tons of loot with very little item identity, moving on and hurrying your way past so many beautiful and crafted areas of the game to get that fabled Endgame. An endgame which acts like a collecting pool for everyone to plop down in and wait like baby birds for a little bit of dopamine hits with a new piece of gear, a new item rating, a new cosmetic or a mount, etc. The irony of all this is you also get that during the leveling process. You get those dopamine hits, but it's been streamlined so much, flattened out so much that it doesn't actually matter. It becomes a means to an end. I think we're in dire need of slowing the hell down in an MMO and not trying to rush it. It's more than okay to take it slow, and it's more than okay for the game to encourage you to do that. MMOs were at their best when they were marathons, not sprints. Somewhere along the way, we shoved that marathon into the end game and added a sprint to get there. All in the name of retention. Now this next comment, it comes from a dog, a British dog, and the self-proclaimed most cynical pretend dog on the internet, Sawman UK, whose MMO channel you can find down below. MMORPGs become more fun when they die and are hosted on community-ran private servers. So this is an interesting one because it's kind of hard to argue against. Star Wars Galaxy's Ultima Online, Warhammer Return of Reckoning, they kind of prove the point to a certain extent, in large part because they give players more choice, specifically in the case of Star Wars Galaxies and Ultima Online. They're also, of course, part of those games being free. Everquest P99 and Project Quarm are other ones too, as well as ones for other big games. The downside is, of course, the lack of official support or expansions, although in recent times we've actually seen some expansions for these private servers. It kind of makes me wish MMOs had the option of a private server too, not just official servers. More of a shared world approach like survival games that have official servers and private servers. The downside of that, of course, is the splintering of populations and the downgrading of achievement. It is an interesting hot take from Sawman for sure though, and I do think every MMO should at least get the option of this if there are passionate players who want to carry on a project once the developers or publishers of that game want to call it quits. We should have an EverQuest Landmark, for example, or a fully functional Vanguard or Wildstar. It seems unfair that these games just kind of disappear. Our next comment comes from another content creator, this one who is newer to the space of MMOs, Lotu. Games need to let us struggle more. Struggle to level, struggle to win, struggle to get the gear, struggle to complete the quest, struggle to find that area. I almost included this back with Hypa's comment, but I thought it was worth separating because there is a difference between rushing and struggle, even if there are some key connections, like the simplicity and ease of most leveling experiences right now. Struggle invites achievement, and it actually exists in just about every MMO out there. Yes, it actually does exist in just about every MMO out there, including the modern MMOs. The real question is, where? You'll struggle in WoW in a Mythic Plus most likely. I know I sure as hell would. But you'll definitely struggle a lot more in EverQuest leveling experience. You'll struggle in Ultima Online because there's no map. After 2004, we kind of went into this arms race to speed up and ease struggle, pushing it further and further from the starting experience, letting people get hooked before introducing struggle to a point where in most MMOs, there's relatively no struggle until you're already deeply invested. The way that I think of it is probably definitely going to age me, but it's kind of like if you're trying to sharpen a pencil. You need to do something, right? You're not going to be able to write with a pencil if you don't sharpen it. So you sharpen it down. You get rid of some of that struggle, right? But if you do it too much, there's nothing left. There's nothing to use. And I think that's kind of what ended up happening with a lot of MMOs. Those pencils were sharpened down to the nub in basically just to get rid of all of the struggle they could, so that there's none left. Not the best, admittedly, way to try and explain that, but I should have done something else. But I think you kind of get it, I hope. We went from like a bumpy road to a smooth paved road. It's too smooth. It's too paved. Needs a little roughness. Low 2, in my opinion, is absolutely correct here. Some struggle is needed in MMOs, not just at the end game, but throughout, because of what follows struggle: a sense of achievement. A game like Elden Ring finds a good balance between struggle, reward, and ease. There are easy moments, there are struggle moments, and there are rewards. And it starts from the moment the game begins right through to the end. Now take Elden Ring and imagine 90% of the game was simple and easy with no struggle. And then you ran head first into Millennia.
Let your flesh be consumed by the scarlet rot.
That is... Oh.
That shit would probably kind of suck, and you might just like quit the game. But instead, because you've been trained for that moment, you've been trained bit by bit by bit as you went through the game, and you had different levels of achievement and struggle, you get to have moments like this, like when Mr. Guybrush, a friend of mine, defeated Millennia after over 400 attempts.
Your strength, extraordinary. The mark of a true lord. Dear Mika.
No more. No more. Oof.
I finally met.
Oh my god, 40
Oh my
months.
god, what's happening?
Look at the time fly by.
Stewart of Ostagar had this to say: MMOs that incorporate scaling for a level system take away from the experience of enjoying an open world. The system can take away the challenge of certain mob engagements, while at the same time throwing players into overtuned mechanics they aren't prepared for. Furthermore, this type of system disrupts the flow of a structured narrative. While games like WoW used to offer multiple zones within the same level range, they would still contain storylines that overlap from previous lower level ones. I honestly don't have much to add here to what Stewart of Ostagar had to say. I think they said it pretty damn well. One of the MMOs that I tried to like for ages that crystallized this issue for me was Elder Scrolls Online. With the 1 Tamriel update, they removed any sense of progression within the world, because the world itself matched your level. It didn't matter if an area was previously level 50 and you were level 10, that area was now level 10. And that level 10 area, when you're level 50, might be a level 50 area. There was nothing to aspire to, nothing to aim for, no area that was a high level area, no progression to the story that seemingly made much sense. It was just all very, very open. And to an extent that sounds good, except it robs something from the game. It robs some of that sense of progression and achievement and fear. The benefit is of course the ability to recycle content at lower levels. In a sense, all of that does sound great, but what it loses to gain that, it's just too much in my opinion. Marl MMO, who is a much more well-spoken person than myself, had this to say about MMOs. Where did the MMORPG go? MMOs are succumbing to Goodhart's law of player retention and profit instead of being virtual worlds producing sufficient revenue to support its developers. Okay, here we go. So Goodhart's law of player retention and profit, well, kind of, is from some British economist. They say, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. So yeah, I agreed. Also check out Marl MMO. You can find their link down below. MMOs don't need to innovate to be successful. They just need to do what people enjoy. Well, with a different coat of paint, says MMO Bite Sticks. I think this one from Sticks is one that will resound very well with this community. We hit a turning point in 2004 where MMOs homogenized around the most successful MMO. On its surface, one might point to that and say, we need more innovation. But I'd suggest that the problem wasn't that MMOs copied WoW, but rather, every MMO copied WoW. Final Fantasy XIV is a great example of an MMO using basically the exact model of WoW minus PvP, and becoming very successful. Or maybe even adding a bit more story, but still very similar to WoW, a quest hub based MMO, with raids and grouping and all that kind of thing. Basically, it feels a lot like WoW. You can do things like this. You can iterate on things. Iterating on past MMO tenets that worked, like challenge, exploration, lore, and world building, as well as social group mechanics that can be honestly timeless. In this community specifically, we see so many comments about a remaster of Dark Age of Camelot, a remaster of Everquest, a remaster of Ultima Online or Star Wars Galaxies, etc. Games that had things people enjoyed but are in dire needs of a new coat of paint. But I'll add one more hot take here to what Sticks had to say. I think in some cases, especially with those MMOs that came out pre-World of Warcraft, the user interface, the UI, can actually need more of a new coat of paint than the actual game itself. Those UIs can be very, very difficult to deal with and can be a bigger pain point than graphics at times. But speaking of paint and graphics, this is a weird transition, but it'll make sense in a second. Red Frog had the following to say. Kind of a cliche thought, but the focus should be on the journey and world experience first. That will enhance each aspect of focus after it. Locations, gear, community, enemies, etc. This is something a lot of games post-WoW lost. This is something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and how the journey has often been turned into a race. Run as fast as you can into the collecting pool that is Endgame, because the pool is easier to balance and create content around. But if you go back to the origins of MMOs as these branching Dungeons and Dragons-esque campaigns from their mud origins, the end was never the focus. The end was the end. The journey itself was important, each and every step of it. From the first few steps as you stumble about to later on when you get your feet under you. It's what drew a lot of us into the space in the first place. MMOs weren't advertised as raid endgame targets and complete dailies at max level. They were advertised as living and breathing worlds. That starts from the moment you step into the game, not the moment you finish it and start MMO Part 2. Now, remember I said about like paint and stuff like that? That sounds weird because that comment had nothing to do with graphics, right? But it has to do with Red Frog. Red Frog is a very talented artist that I just happened to meet very recently, but I went over and looked at their art and they have so much really cool shit like this. Go check out their website, I'll link it down below. They have art on there from EverQuest, Zelda, and The Witcher and more. It's just awesome. I love seeing artistic talent like this so much. From artist to mic drop, let's go on to nice. Modern MMOs aren't great, but even if they were, they wouldn't be able to compete in some gamers' heads because nostalgia is quite blinding. I'd even argue even if a new game was better, a game you played while you were younger with less responsibilities and such will cause one to be jaded. Nice Gaming, who you can also find linked down below. To an extent, I agree with Nice. Nostalgia is powerful. We will never have the same emotional connection to whatever game made you fall in love with the genre because it's tied to so many things like your life at that point in time, the newness of the genre to you specifically when you played, and nostalgia just simply inflating those experiences and deflating the negative ones. But the jaded part comes in from what MMOs have been doing for well over a decade, in my opinion. When you only get the same model for that same 10 years, it's hard not to get jaded. There's a reason why many of us now look to smaller indie MMOs that won't even come close to the polish of even the first MMOs. And it's because modern MMOs have been ignoring core parts of what has made MMOs fun in the past, or they're overdoing it with monetization. Which, speaking of, mobile games have infected the PC MMORPGs with less than desirable features. Mrs. Sticks. I have to agree 100% with Mrs. Sticks here. From battle passes to daily rewards to autoplay, and even mobile-friendly controls like say in Terrace Land, the push to mobile has definitely had a negative impact on MMORPG games. Mobile has proved incredibly profitable for game companies, and so it's natural for those companies to want to carry over that success to an MMORPG. The problem with doing that is the mediums and investment in them are so entirely different. Not to mention the often scummy monetization used in many mobile games, right down to those ads with the tiny little X that you can't click without accidentally clicking the damn ad. Not that that happened to me recently and frustrated me or anything like that when I was writing the script. An MMO built for PC and mobile will always be an MMO built for mobile. The only space where I could see this expand a bit and actually work for both the people that want to have a more mobile setup like this would be the handheld space, basically like the Steam Deck space, which essentially works a lot like a console. There were a lot of hot takes here, and many of them were fantastic and deserving of even more deep dives. But as this video just started to get longer and longer, I thought I'd kind of condense it a little bit. But if you like it, I'll definitely do a follow-up. Because honestly, a lot of these are really freaking interesting. I'm really curious to see what comes from all this. But I want to end with one final one of these, which I think might be the most controversial hot take, or perhaps not at all, given that this is a video on my channel. Probably not, actually. Everquest is the Genghis Khan of MMOs. No matter which one you play, you will see its DNA in their design. From Pip Sexton. I mean, what else can you say? Cheers everybody, have a wonderful day.